Hi, and welcome back to Nutrition Made Simple. Today, our topic is going to be on Akkermansia. So this is a beneficial bacteria that makes up about 4% of your gut bacteria. We've talked a lot about the term microbiome. We've talked a lot about gut bacteria. And I think sometimes the more you hear about gut bacteria, the more inundated with information you can kind of become. So people know that we need good bacteria. I think the understanding is very clear that our gut is where a lot of our health resides. It is where we foundationally begin our immune system. It is where we really digest our food. It's where a lot of our neurotransmitters are made for our brain. So our guts are absolutely responsible for our overall well-being. And today we want to talk about one single strain of bacteria. I think something that's really, really cool is that there is more research happening every day on individual strains of bacteria. So rather than us just guessing or taking a lot of different types of bacteria or, unsure of what does that bacteria do, what does this bacteria do, they're now becoming very targeted in the approach with supplementation and specific strains of bacteria. So for Akkermansia, this is actually a keystone strain. That means it is something we're born with, but unfortunately we're seeing a lot more children not having enough of this in their GI tracts. There are really cool testing out there for moms to test their babies, and I've actually heard of many, many children and seen even reports back of these children lacking this strain of bacteria. So what does this bacteria do? It's going into our bodies, it's going into our guts, and Akkermansia plus something called butyrate. And butyrate comes from certain foods. It's heavily in butter. That's my favorite source of butyrate. But what it does is it goes in, and I actually have this written down, it converts the fiber in your food to butyrate. And then this helps secrete a protein called P9. That P9 then helps stimulate something called GLP-1, which is a hormone to slow the emptying of the stomach. So I know that was a lot of processes there, but when we slow the emptying of the stomach, we actually create more satiation, more full and more complete feeling from what you're eating, because our insulin is not secreting at such a high rate. So insulin is going to be the growth hormone for the body. Growth hormone for the body means that when you eat a piece of toast or you're going to eat some grapes and your pancreas is working properly, it would only secrete a little amount of insulin to help bring that sugar levels back down, to digest it, and to go on through the system. If we have faulty insulin, or maybe we've consumed too many carbs for too long, or perhaps we lack a bit of the certain beneficial bacteria, we're going to over-secrete our insulin, creating more waves of hunger, creating more of the feeling of needing to eat more food, and then also just being overall more hungry. So this is going back to that regulation of insulin and keeping the stomach feeling more full. So what does that ultimately create? That creates more of a metabolic effect, meaning it's going to create a little bit help for the metabolism. Now, I'm not saying this is the cure for weight issues, or I'm not saying it's going to make you, lose 50 pounds. But if we go back and we look foundationally at the systems for creating better weight control, insulin is the foundational way to create a better metabolic system when you have the insulin more regulated. So at its essence, that is what this Akkermansia is doing. There are 3,000 scientific publications on this single bacteria of Akkermansia, and it does take 90 days to get full effect. So with any good and natural supplement, you are not looking for quick change. It's just not possible. You have to actually go in, you've got to get this back into the system, into the GI tract, and then your body's, down responses from what this has created are going to have to start, incorporating this and seeing the effects then through the other areas of the body. So 90 days for full effect. I've heard wonderful reports back from this within our store, our clients, our customers, and specifically speaking, this brand Pendulum is the world's only live Akkermansia. So that's really unique to the market. What does that mean, live? It means that these bacteria are actually alive sitting in the capsule. So such a strange concept. but the bacteria are actually moving in there. They're ready to go into your body. And then because they're alive, they're really going to keep replicating and create a perfect environment there in your GI tract. So we love that we're able to carry this at our store, but we're also excited for all this new research coming out. I think this could be something that could be very beneficial for the person that is just constantly hungry, constantly looking for the next or searching for the next answer for, feeling more full, helping with the metabolic functions. And it also has good help within the mucus layer of the gut. So that's the last thing I want to touch on about this. One of my biggest subjects that I like to speak about with my clients and my customers now is that probiotics are so beneficial, but when we really dig into what is so beneficial within our gut, it is really helping support the mucosal lining and the mucosal layers within the GI tract. So if we have a really properly working gut, we're going to have this nice mucus layer that creates this, almost if you imagine like kids with slime or something like that, there's going to be a layer that protects things from going into the actual GI tract. That means it's going to protect from viruses, pathogens, parasites, heavy metals, toxins, because we're inundated with those in our world. And if we have a mucus layer that is thick and sludgy and really protectant, those things cannot penetrate. So they're not going to be able to go into that GI tract in the gut and do that. This is very responsible for creating a healthy mucosal layer. There's a lot of other things that can help create mucosal thickening and layers as well, but this is a very important keystone strain for the mucus layer of the gut. And so when you're asking yourself, how do I know if my mucus layer is good or not within my gut? One thing I would ask yourself, how many infections have you had within a year? Are you constantly catching everything that's going around? Are you constantly saying, I just had a UTI, now I'm having a sinus infection, now I'm having, I caught this cold, now this stomach bug? We are meant to have some sicknesses and some immune challenges because our body then gets stronger as it responds to it. But if you feel like you've been one infection, next infection, never treating or diagnosing, because that's not what we do, but I would go back and begin with the gut. Absolutely first thing. And I would begin with looking at that mucosal lining and the mucosal layer. And this is one of the things that could be helpful in the mucosal lining. So that's all for today on Akkermansia, but we look forward to next time in our next video.